today I am so delighted to sit down with award-winning author of 13 books and a filmmaker, Weam Namou. Hello, Weam. It's great to have you today. Welcome to MEA.
Hi, thank you for having me, Hanan.
You're welcome. It's great to have you today at MEA TV.
Thank you. Where, by the way, I was mentioning earlier to you that I was here, not in this particular studio, but when it was TV Orient, I had the pleasure also to be interviewed about my first book.
And how long ago was that?
15 years ago.
Wow, wow. And you're here again.
Yes, yes. It's like, so I'm very, I appreciate that you guys, give honor to artists and writers and filmmakers. So thank you.
Absolutely. You said to me about like your rich heritage, which is the Babylonian heritage.
Well, as you know, I'm of Chaldean descent.
Sure.
And so we have a very rich heritage that goes back thousands of years. And I left Iraq when I was only 9 years old.
Okay.
So I wasn't really as familiar with my heritage as I ended up learning here in the United States. Through my writing and research, I discovered so much richness from that land, including, everything that writing was discovered there. And what most people don't realize is the first writer in recorded history is Enheduanna, who is a woman from ancient Iraq.
Okay.
And she was the daughter of Sargon the Great, and she was a priestess, a princess, and she was the first known person who signed her name. At that time, when they used to write on cuneiforms, they would not write the name of who wrote it. But she did take authorship of her poem, and she wrote, Enheduanna wrote this.
Wow, this is interesting.
Yes,
she must have influenced you.
I think so. I think I was maybe her in the past life. So when I started discovering all this rich history, little by little, I started incorporating it into my writing, because I feel that, God created us in a certain land for a certain purpose.
Absolutely.
And part of our responsibility is to continue the teachings and to make people aware of what we learn.
So being born in Baghdad and raised here, tell me about how did the culture of the Chaldean culture influenced you?
Well, originally I would say that the Iraqi and the Arab culture influenced me, because really Iraq is an Arabic country, and a lot of the things that we share with, whether it's music or food, the language, the Arabic language, it's Arabic. But then I found out that there was, when you go further and further back, you do see that the Chaldean the Chaldean history did affect me, and you see that we have so much connections that we're not aware of. The way it influenced me is that Chaldeans are builders. They created so many beautiful things in this world. They were the first to create the modern day cities. And then I realized, oh, that's where that part of me comes from, the interest to keep creating. I have 13 books, I think, is because to me, creating is kind of a natural process. The creative aspect, they were very creative people. In the past, unfortunately, that's not something that lasted in that region throughout the time because of all the political turmoil. So what I tried to do in being here for so long in the United States, even though I have visited the Middle East and I've gone around the world.
How often do you go to Iraq, for example?
Well, I have not gone back. I have not traveled outside the country too much since I got married. Let's just
how long ago was that?
So that was 14 years ago. My first book came out right around when I was engaged, and I was just at that time, in film school, and then I had my kids, and I got involved in that, and focused more on the writing. But before that, I traveled the Middle East, North Africa, Europe. I visited Iraq in 2000, and part of my story in the Great American Family and the book.
Gonna talk about
the book that won an Eric Hoffer Award, and then later the documentary that I made that also just won an award, an International Film Award, an Indie Fest Award. Part of that story is part of my travels to Iraq in 2000.
Part of the culture. as well, right?
Part of the culture, but part of the story, because there was a connection, actually. Stories are very intriguing. I mean, I felt like that story followed me. I did not go after it. It went after me.
After your trip, is that what you're saying? Or?
I feel like it belonged to me, that story. Because when we get to speak about that, I will, explain how the family approached me to write the story. But my visit in 2000 to Iraq, I did have the opportunity to share that in the book, and editors loved that. Actually, American editors, publishers, my writers groups were always supportive. Americans were always supportive of my work, because they said, we did not know that about that region. We did not know that there are Chaldeans, that there are Christian Iraqis. We did not know that there is a world outside of what they see on regular TV.
So you shed a light on that.
I shed the light. Unfortunately, in mainstream media and mainstream publishing houses and films, the opposite is always what shows up. But regardless, we as artists have a responsibility to do our part. So that never deterred me from telling the stories that I felt is important. And there was always an audience for that. And the proof of the quality of them is in the awards they've received.
So as a storyteller, this is what you're trying to achieve.
I'm going to go back a little bit in the mid-1990s when I used to travel.
Again.
So I had taken a trip with my friend, and we had gone on this tour to Portugal, Morocco, and Spain. And on the way home, we stopped at Heathrow Airport on the way in London. And I remember that I went into a bookstore and saw a rack of books about Middle Eastern women. And on each cover was a woman who was veiled and running away, either from a husband, brother, son, uncle. Somebody was trying to kill her.
It's not a good story.
And
not a good cover.
All the authors were Western authors. So I think I was naive that was the views in the United States.
And it has intrigued you, obviously.
Well, it upset me originally.
Upset you and intrigued you.
Intrigued me after I came home. I came home looking for stories that were more realistic, at least. I wasn't trying to look for stories that, make the Arab person or the Chaldean look good and that person look bad. Just the real life stories. Because I had read so much by that time. We're talking the mid-1990s. I was I read a lot of books, and so I was familiar that when you write, there's the good and the bad in everything. But I didn't really find the good in that world from what was available. So when I came home and researched and found, just Najib Mahfouz was the closest I could get, and he was from Egypt, and he wrote about that region. So what I decided to do is that I made a commitment that my writings, my storytelling would at the very least, just tell true life stories of that region and people. Not the good, not the bad, just my true experiences. And that's how I kind of started gearing from novels, and even my novels are based on true stories. So tell me about
your first novel.
My first novel was The Feminine Art, and actually I was working with an editor who she said she was interested in the kind of stories that I had to tell, and she said, "What are you interested to write in?" And I gave her 3 different subjects. And The Feminine Art was a story that was closest to my Chaldean heritage, the characters, everything. She picked that one. And that's when I found that there was an interest in that area. To me, it's not a big deal, but you live in and are raised in a culture, and sometimes you take for granted that it's got something that might be so intriguing to somebody else. So we continued with that novel.
So you take pieces from people and you put it together in your story. Is that how it is?
Well, that particular, the pieces I normally take are very close to home. I don't really...
Isn't it from the people that you know or you encounter?
Well, because my stories get very deep, so I try to get as close as possible to something I've witnessed or experienced, and I will just change it to a point where people might not necessarily recognize who's in the story,
Okay.
but it's very personal.
Yeah.
And again, because I don't feel like it's okay to take ownership of somebody else's experience, and because my mission became that I really did care to bring as true as possible stories to the forefront.
Like real stories.
Real stories.
Real stories. You have to.
And what happened is, because of that, little by little, I started kind of having the courage to kind of step into nonfiction and memoir. Because memoir, you have to really reveal yourself in it. And so it was like I had to gradually go to that direction.
What is the book that you really, you're fond of your 13 books?
Well, from all my books, I have a 4-book memoir series. I was in a school with this a best-selling author and a mystic, as a woman who I still work with her. Her name is Lindy Andrews, and I'm part of her community, and I work with her students now. But I met her in 2011 through a book that she wrote. She's written 20 books, and she's wonderful. When I got involved in her community, she's so supportive of like the feminine consciousness, and the majority of people in her school are women, and I found a kind of support system that I had never found before. And it was a 4-year school that I got involved in that taught ancient teachings. When I wrote those 4-part memoir series, there was a lot of healing that happened within me, and how do I say? I think that when I found that kind of a supportive community, I found that my career started taking off. So I really enjoyed those. I didn't enjoy as much The Great American Family because I was resistant to writing about something that had to do with politics.
So was it your last book, is The Great American?
No, it was not my last book. No, it was in the middle of it. It was actually, I contacted Lynn, my teacher, because of this book, because I was having such a hard time writing it, and she was so successful, and I wanted her advice. And I said, Lynn, I don't know, I've written books before, I'm a journalist, why can't I write this book? And I blamed my kids about that, because my kids were very little, and they would have Dora and SpongeBob in the background, and my husband had his
So it's a chaos.
niece.
It was a chaos.
Yes, it was a total chaos. So I blamed everything else, but on this. And then I found out there was other things that I had to work on, and the school and the women, the mentorship, and her really helped me organize my thoughts and my life.
I guess, right?
And I was able to complete it, and it was worth it. It was the longest book. It took me 6 years to write.
To write it?
Yes.
That's a long time, right? I mean, compared to other books that you have written, right?
Yes, it required a lot of research.
And you said because it involves politics.
It involves politics, and it involved a case that I had to research.
Tell us about this you made it as a documentary after. So
during. At the same, what happened is in 2010, a family approached me about this is a local case. It was a family
here in Michigan.
That lived in Rochester, and at that time they had received already a lot of media attention from Channel 4 and the Oakland Press, and the family knew that I was a writer and journalist, and their daughter. The father was of Iraqi origin, and the mother was of German and Irish heritage. They were a mixed couple. And they said, our daughter is in prison, and she was sentenced to 6 years for selling telecom equipment during the sanctions to Iraq. She was accused of conspiring with a person from that region.
And what was the time? You said 2006. She was jailed, right?
No, she went into prison the year before they met me. Yes. But so they approached me in 2010 because her case was under appeal.
And she was in jail.
She was in jail. Yes, she was in federal prison, and in Kentucky. And what they wanted me to do was help bring attention to this case, so that maybe to put pressure on the government so that they would release her for the
because
appeal.
She was assumingly she was innocent.
What happened is, right after she was sentenced, the guy that she was accused of conspiring with turned out to be a CIA operative. And he revealed himself. He uncovered his identity to save her, because he said that the U.S. had promised that nobody would get hurt who he was working with. Now, this guy is from England. He's of Iraqi origin. and this whole thing was a U.S.-funded operation to listen in to Saddam and his men.
Yeah.
So he was promised nobody was going to get hurt. When she did get hurt, when he saw that happened, he said, I can't live with myself.
He had to reveal himself.
He revealed. Now, in the documentary, we do not reveal his face because he had to even leave, go to another country.
Because of the case?
I would think so, yeah. Because his name, because when he contacted the court at that time, and a lot of the papers that were supposed to be classified, he was signing his name on to help her.
Right.
So even though his image maybe was not shown in too many places, but his name was on the papers. So he did move. He was married to a British woman. But I did interview him. He's a big part of the book. He's a big part of the documentary.
Because he saved her, basically. I mean,
and he has an interesting perspective. So he worked with the CIA, and I said, why are you doing this? And he said, it's not really just for Dawn, it's for the truth.
Oh, okay.
There was so much. So the documentary is not just about her case. It's, and the reason I felt...
Is it about the system as well?
It's about the system. It's about the unjust war, the unjust sanctions that happened to Iraq.
Maybe corruption...
all these elements. And the reason I said earlier that I felt that the story followed me is because there were so many ties between the case and what I knew.
Sure.
As somebody who visited Iraq during the sanctions, as somebody who had strong feelings about the war, as somebody, by the way, who was chaperoned to Iraq, because at that time you couldn't just go as a female by yourself.
So you have to have somebody with you.
You have to have a chaperone who had taken also another woman and her daughter who was my age.
Okay.
It was the woman who was in prison. The person that chaperoned me was her uncle.
Oh, okay.
And then years later, 10 years later, the story comes to me, and it's, you know what I'm saying? There was a connection.
There was definitely a connection.
Yes. I felt like this story was following me, and it wasn't something that I could just turn away from. So I ended up writing it, and I felt like it was my responsibility. I felt like a case like this, because when the CIA came out, there was two of them, but there was one main guy. The court basically said that they did not feel this would make a difference.
Oh.
And so she had to end up serving her prison sentence.
She did the 6, you said 6 years?
6 years. And really, even if she was found guilty, because I had a lot of activists, very known Arab American activists that were on the case. One of them, actually, he's of African descent, but Ron Scott, the late Ron Scott, who worked with John Conyers, Congressman John Conyers. So part of the documentary and even the book are the activists that worked with her. Imad Hamad, yes.
And Imad Hamad.
Yes, and Walid Dawood from CARE. And they were, so even when they looked at the case, they felt that, so even if she was found guilty of an export violation, it would have been an export violation and not a conspiracy.
But she did still served her term.
She served her term. She's released. She's out, and she's living a very private life because it was a very horrendous experience for her and her family. The reason I called it the Great American Family is because her family really were so ideal. I mean, she has a master's degree in business. She went and got her. She studied overseas in China.
So she seemed like she had a normal, nice life, productive life.
Productive life. Her brother is a professor in Oakland University. So here's this family that, they're thinking they're living just the American dream, and then
they got struck by this.
They got struck by this. The same thing that I felt, what the CIA operative felt, there was like a responsibility for us to be a part of the story. Because why else would he put himself at stake like that if he didn't feel like it's part of his responsibility?
Sure, absolutely.
And I believe that part of the reason, aside from how well the documentary and the story was done and written, is the elements involved in that, that, we need to be aware, we need to have a better relationship with our government.
Aware of a lot of things.
Yes, it's our responsibility. We can't just you know, we can't be lazy, and then if things go wrong, point out the fingers to our government.
So it was like a lesson and an experience for you to do something like that.
Yes. Yeah. And it was like, I felt it was an obligation for me to do that too.
As well, an obligation. At the same time, you won an award for this documentary, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that made the 8 years worth it.
That's a lot of years. So
that is a lot of years.
They owe you an award, right?
Right. It's like, you guys have to give me at least that.
I know. You know? I mean, this is nice. This is great. I mean, what you're doing. Thank you. I have a book like right in front of me that you have written.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it, and I want you to just read maybe something like your favorite, maybe lines.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is a poetry book. It's called I Am a Mute Iraqi with a Voice. And actually, that's a title of a poem that I wrote.
That's a nice title. I like that. I like that. It has like a deep meaning.
Well, it was because it was written during the war, and I felt like there was nothing else I could do but write a poem. Like I had no strength to stop the war. And there was another thing going on. I had just had my daughter, and I was a new mom, and I wasn't able to write a long book, which I was used to. I studied poetry in Prague through the university. Through the University of New Orleans summer program.
Nice.
And before that, I really wasn't familiar. Like, well, I don't really understand poetry. So I studied poetry in Prague through the University of New Orleans summer program, and then thank God I did that, because what happened is, especially after I got married and had kids, and I couldn't focus on like long books or anything that was
so that was like easier, right?
It was a lot easier for me. I felt like I was able to still tell a story.
And you can express
within a
yourself.
few lines. Yes, I could say so much and not have to go through a whole book. And a lot of publications were receiving my poetry very well. So I got published in many publications that were even, the poem I'm going to read, it was published by Ecumen, which is in England.
Okay.
And I like, it's the first poem I got paid for.
Oh,
like
then
35.
We should hear it.
It was 35. They said,
$35?
you know, we can either get you send you a free subscription or 35. I said, you know, since this is going to be the first time I
like to have the cash.
I never, of course, like, they sent it in their own money. And
the pound, right?
Yeah, and I kept it as it is, just for memory. For memory. This poem has since then been published by many publications and republished. And recently, award-winning poet Dunya Mikhail, who is a friend and a neighbor, and she, through a project that was funded through the Knight Foundation, she did a small documentary about Iraqi American women poets. I don't know if she'll kill me, but I forgot the title. I think it was called From Baghdad to America or something like that. And where we had these filmmakers come from Washington, and they film each woman poet doing one poem. And they connected, the whole purpose was to connect how we are connected from Iraq to here,
America.
Yes, and how it's connected in our writing, that theme. So this is called That Line. And I'm going to just read it. It's very short. Who cast the vote on where the east and north end and the south and west begin? Where is that line? I search for it and wonder if it's pink, gold, silver, charcoal, or chocolate. Does it feel like pebbles, sand, lipstick, chalk, or rain? I left Baghdad airport, had my passport stamped in blue ink, crossed over lands, jungles, farms, and oceans, saw the Statue of Liberty before I flew into Detroit and drove on Highway 94, passing by that big tire until I arrived at my new residence. But nowhere did I detect a trace of that line. Where is that line that is as perfectly drawn on the map as the decorations of a wedding cake or the hem on my blouse and skirt? If it's not visible on soil and grass, how am I expected to grasp it in my head? Should I force myself to pretend it's alive, not dead? Regardless of what is written or said, lines do not exist in one's soul. They have no place in the heart. They cannot bring other countries closer or push them apart.
This is beautiful. I love that. It is like so deep. I love that. I love poetry to begin with, but this is beautiful.
And I feel like it's So even though I wrote it, I think it was published in 2007, but it still applies to today that we, when it comes to love and how we feel, whatever boundaries we put, love just will go beyond that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
I agree with that. Is it all like, it's all poems?
Yes, it's a collection of poems. I think 72 poems that were published in many different publications. And I have written some poems since then. And so once the collection gets to the point where I can do a manuscript, I'll probably do that again.
I would love to borrow that, or maybe like buy it.
Oh, no, this is my gift. This is a gift too.
This is nice.
The nice thing about it is poetry too, for busy people like yourself and me. It's so much easier to read.
Right.
That way you don't
How many
have to
pages
commit
is
to
this?
it.
Let's see.
It's fairly short. Just 100, about 100
that's
pages.
This is like perfect.
Yes. It's
perfect.
and the poems are fairly short.
So did you get to read this poem out loud? Is that what it is? Like?
Yeah, they actually did they did a wonderful job. I did get to see the video, and each woman who read the poem, they kind of associated what she was reading with images of Iraq and Baghdad and her home where we write right now. Like they came to my home and they showed my office, and they did a very, very nice job. And we are planning, I don't know what her plans, I think this part of her plan is to, show it somewhere where we can have a forum and discuss the Iraqi American experience as poets.
I think it would be a great idea to do that.
Yeah, and she's great. She really supports, as a woman poet, and she supports women poets.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask you, I know you're working on a documentary right now. Would you like to talk about that maybe?
Oh, yes.
I know probably it's in the first
It's in the first stage, yes. It's in pre-production. So myself and a producer, Dr. Stan Williams, who was my instructor in film school. He's an award-winning veteran author and filmmaker who worked with as a story consultant for Will Smith. And the documentary that we're working on, I have a feature script that was a quarter finalist for the Francis Coppola Award that Stan took interest in. And it's about a Muslim and a Christian who are neighbor, who have to confront each other and their differences. And
here in
the United States.
In the United States.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think all my work is mostly Iraqi American experience. Like it's So and there's a lot of tension between them because it's during the 2016 elections, and one is a liberal and the other one is a conservative. One is a Muslim, the other one is a Christian.
But
so
are you
there's a lot
talking
of humor.
about Iraqi Muslim and Iraqi Christian, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the women are young, both are beautiful, both have very strong personalities. There's a lot of comedy, there's a lot of humor into it, because I always believe that, when I went and visited Iraq during the sanctions, in all my books, there's a lot of humor, because I see the love and humor in everything, despite the ugly stuff.
Like positivity and positivity.
Well, the reality. I used to crack up on things of the way, the conversations and that community. The Middle Eastern community has a lot of flavor into it that gets lost in the war and the stereotypes.
Beside the conflicts and all that.
With all of but it's mostly also, on a political nature, if you think about it. But when we enter each other's homes, it's a different story, right? So these women do end up getting into each other's homes. They have to, as neighbors, needing each other's help and stuff like that. So Stan was interested in this script, and we wanted to make it as a feature, to produce it. It is a feature already. Then he said, why don't we create also a documentary that is kind of like piggybacks off of that as well, and about the Muslim and the Christian community, especially after what happened with ISIS. There was a lot of tension with them and over here in the U.S. And to also include the Jewish community, who at one point those three religions lived peacefully
in Iraq. Okay.
And I have to say, with regards to the Jewish community, they have found the power of storytelling. They have used it to heal and move forward, and I feel that we can also do that as well.
So by talking about it, that it's sort of a healing process. Is that what you mean?
Well, Hollywood is, the Jewish community. What they have their stories out there. You can't not know about what happened to the Jews, and there's some of the best stories, and the ones that have won awards are about that community, because they value one time I did discuss this with somebody and said, what is it, why are you guys give so much emphasis to the arts and the culture and Hollywood and the storytelling? And they felt that given what had happened to them, that they wanted to make sure that they never forget that and that the world never forgets.
That's why they emphasize on this.
They emphasize.
And they stress on it.
Yes, they emphasize the arts. They know that this is a better healing mechanism than, you know, revenge.
So this, I mean, yeah, right. And so this is what you were trying to do, like the same thing in a way.
Yes, through our community, because our community needs a lot of healing, and we have to understand that we have to empower artists, filmmakers, writers. I try to do that through. I bring anybody who comes my path and you know, that I can include in my books, I will. I have a show, as you know, a half-hour weekly show.
Yeah, we have to talk about, yeah, you have a half an hour show.
It's a half-hour weekly show that started actually exactly January 2nd, 2018, and I do
So what is it about? Yeah.
Well, it's about, so I interview people that I feel like are inspirational and making a difference in the world and are underrepresented because, you know, our media, that's what they do. They just kind of just keep focusing on certain areas. And then there's a lot of people doing great work, such as yourself. I told you I want you to be on my show.
God, thank you so much.
So that kind of get left out. And then we need to hear their stories. And a lot of the political tension that happened in 2016, I felt that rather than getting upset and getting snagged into that, what can I do to do the picture that I like to see? Okay, because it's partly we do what we do for sanity, you know, so we can stay sane. So I found that this was very healing for me. It was very fun when I bring people into my you know, just like now, it was very conversational when I bring people into my studio. So this is how you do it, like conversational? Very conversational.
Real stories.
I had a guest yesterday. He came, he's an author, Rayan El-Shawaf from Malta.
Okay.
He was visiting friends in Florida and came to Michigan for the interview. And then we were able to invite him over for dinner with my husband, and he saw my children. And that show created a platform for us to be friends
and to connect. I mean, this is how you connect with people. I think media,
it's
so important
to highlight his book. It's a great book. He's a great personality. So that's my way of giving back and not complaining.
Absolutely. Yeah, but tell me where is your show, the station and all that?
So if you live in Oakland County, it's CMN TV. It's CMNTV.org. I believe that you can watch it either online on Mondays at 8:30, I think, and then Wednesday at 7. But you can watch it online. But I also, if people follow me, whether it's on Facebook or I have a website, Namou.com.
So you're on social media?
Yes, I'm on social media because I have copyright over my shows. So once I interview people, then I upload the video on social media.
That's what I do as well. Yes,
because a lot of people that can't get to it, or because like I said, it's only in Oakland County. It reaches about 140,000, 150,000 homes, but you can watch it live on their website.
Okay.
But then I upload the video on my website, and
So this is nice. I like that you're doing like the show.
Thank you.
It's really nice.
Thank you.
And anything else about your writing that you love to add to this interview? Oh yeah, advice for younger writers.
Yeah, well, I was telling you about patience. That was the hardest thing for me to learn. I just, you know, I have a vision. When I have a vision, I just want to run there. And when life slows me down, I get sometimes frustrated. But it was all good because it created more flavor and quality in my work.
So is it like ups and downs that the writer goes through? I mean, in order to get, you know, the book done or something?
Yes, you need a lot of patience. Some of my books have gone through so many revisions. I work with really professional people, and they've gone through so many revisions. I mean, over like a sentence or something like that. You have to keep going and thinking about things. But it's important that you care what you put out there. It matters. So thank God I never just kind of felt like so impatient that I put something that wasn't worthy out there. I do care what I put out there. So I had to just keep like praying and relaxing and meditating and doing yoga.
So I mean, you face challenges like every other profession. I believe. Yeah,
that's true.
And with the technology right now, don't you feel like, you know, people are reading like less books? I mean, does that affect what you're doing?
I don't know that people are reading less books. I think what affects what I'm doing is that people sometimes want to read just for entertainment. And while my books have an entertainment element to it, but what happens is sometimes we just want to forget our problems. And if we do that often enough, it becomes addictive. You know, if we become addictive to soap operas, where it's not just for entertainment, you give yourself an hour a day, you give yourself all day just to...
Like any other things.
Any other thing, yes. And sometimes people don't realize that, yes, the media can be very addictive as well. It takes us away from our own issues and our own life. And I find, this is, I think, I guess, but this is nothing new. But even when I was telling you about the books that were available about the Middle Easterners, how they're viewed, I think people feel that's more... Unfortunately, they feel it's more entertaining. They might even invest more in that. But the people that are doing otherwise, they have to not give into that for the sake of monetary means. Like I've had an editor from New York who really loved my writing, and they said, you know, you could have a bestseller if you write about honor killing. And I said, well, no, thank you. I don't know anything about honor killing, and this is totally the opposite of what I'm trying to do.
I've read the book about the honor killing.
But it's like, you know, oh, this would be really, you know, this is what people... Well, no, I don't have to feel people junk just because, you know...
You can't do something that you don't feel probably, or you're...
Yeah, but I also do believe that I care enough about my reader. I don't want to feed them junk. I don't like, sometimes I do it, but I don't like to feed my kids junk, let alone, I don't like to feed anybody I'm working with junk.
Well, you have to work from the heart.
You have to work from the heart. Yeah, you have to care.
You have to care.
You have to care.
And this is what writing is all about.
Yes, yes.
And we am Namou. I mean, I just loved sitting with you to do it
Thank
with you and interviewing
I feel the
you.
Same thing
I
with
mean,
you
are a great author and a great filmmaker, and I think you're gonna do so much eventually when it comes to filmmaking.
Inshallah,
It's gonna be your second, documentary now.
Feature. Well, yeah, I'm actually there's a different one. I'm almost done, but this one is the one. That's a different story. But yeah, I just remembered. But this one is the one that we are putting a little bit effort because it needs like more work.
Sure. Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you for visiting MEA, and please come back soon and tell us more about your work. Please.
Thank you.
Hanan. Thank you.
It was my pleasure.
Good. From MEA TV and Radio, thank you for watching.